Thank you, Magba, for hosting this event. Thank you, Lucia and Talking Galleries, for inviting me. I think you all should be excited, as I am, not only with the speakers, but also with the topic. I'm really excited because actually this is a topic that I tried to pull off in 2015, presented to a big art fair. They said no. But I'm stubborn. 2016, I tried again. Another big art fair. No. And then 2018, I tried with, I was less ambitious, with a mid-level art fair. And they also said no. So, oops. Oh. Ay, perdona. ¿Estás bien? Sorry. So, I'm really happy that we can talk about this topic. I hope you will all agree that it's a great title. See it in Venice, buy it in Basel, our biennials in your art fairs. Well, I have a nice presentation, but before I can start the presentation, because there are some topics. Oh, yeah, it's there. Wonderful. Let me see this. Okay, I worked the presentation. So, biennials, art fairs. I'm quoting here Italian art critic and editor at Fine Press, Michele Robecchi, who's based in London. This is what he wrote a couple of years ago. I still believe that biennials and art fairs are like apples and oranges. They're both delicious, but fundamentally different. 2008. I still remember that phrase, you know, apples and oranges. So now I have this wonderful art tune by the talented Mexican-American, New York-based artist Pablo Leguera. With a little bit of imagination, we can cross out Documenta and put Venice, and then next to it Basel. So, like him, do we have to choose between Venice and Basel? Do we have to choose between art history and the art market? Do we have to choose between disinterestedness and commodification? Do we have to choose between oranges and apples? Okay, so let's start with our first speaker, Nicolas Bourriaud. Actually, I think I could easily skip the presentation because who doesn't know Nicolas Bourriaud? I think we all know who Nicolas Bourriaud is. And I think I'm pretty sure that most of you know Nicolas Bourriaud, like I did, when he co-founded and co-directed the Palais de Tokyo between 1999 and 2006 with Jérôme Sanz.
There's a guy here, yeah.
There's another who will tomorrow will be, there he is. Greet him. He will, Jérôme will be participating tomorrow on a panel.
Was trying to escape, but no.
Yes.
Wow.
So, another interesting element I pointed out about Nicolas is that he was curator, focus country France at Arco Madrid, 1999.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. In art fair with like a Venice with a national pavilion. Isn't that funny? Then among the many biennials, triennials, pentennials that Nicolas did, I just highlighted the triennial, which went down under the magnificent name Alter Modernism, that biennial, and the latest edition of the Istanbul Biennial. I just put there an image of Johannes Büttner, installation image, and the title was The Seventh Continent. He is also a director on MOCO. In Spanish, it doesn't sound very good, to be honest, but it's
I know.
Montpellier Contemporary.
In France, it's fine.
2015, 2021. Wow. And of course, Nicolas Bourriaud is a gifted, prolific writer. Of course, left relational aesthetics. Some of you might have read it, like me. And then another one I pointed out, the Radicant. I put there the French edition, Radicant, to show that we also speak French, so it's good. We go to our next Next speaker, to my right, Ellen de Bruijne. We go a long way back since I lived in the Netherlands, so I know her gallery. She's art historian, curator, and founder-director of Ellen de Bruijne Project. We were talking this morning because she also, like Julia Peyton-Jones, did the shift from more curatorial, curator work to sales work or gallery work, whatever. Like most galleries, she has participated in many art fairs, like, for example, Basel, Liste, Arco Madrid, Artissima. And some of the artists she works with, it's like Otto Berchem, two Spanish artists among them, Lara Marcegui, Dora Garcia, Japanese Suchan Kinoshita, and Maria Paz, Saskia Janse, I can go on. Yes, and most of the artists I was interested because some of them have, of course, participated in biennials, Documentas, National Pavilion, and things like that. So, and our last speaker, last but not least, Alex Moore. I think he has a very interesting profile. Political scientist with a master in ICR, International Conflict Resolution. One interesting thing is that maybe, even though most of you are not interested in politics, while you are, he was part of the campaign of the presidential candidate Ingrid Betancourt. So it's interesting. I thought that was, I said to him this morning, you're getting more interesting each day. Alex, he's, as you can see, he's member of the selection committee of Arco Madrid and Albo. He has two spaces together with his partner, Charpentier, Maurice Charpentier, the galler, Philippe Charpentier, a space in Paris, 2010, and a space in Bogota since 2021. Artist the gallery works with or represents, it's very multicultural, Kader Atia, Alexandra Apostol, Paz Errázuriz, Luis Pajarpa, Bianca Bondi, and I can go on. So I did a little bit my homework. Now, let's start with our friend here, Nicolas. Okay, this is an image, l'épreuve de cœur, bodies at stake. MoCo, Montpellier Contemporary, was many things, but one of the things was that they showcased private collections. So an institutional space showcasing private collections. So that's interesting. And this is an installation shot of the Patricia Sandré Torrero Ordengo collection that was exhibited end 21, beginning 22. So, because this takes us to the next image, and this is just the show that's ongoing now at Palazzo Bolani in Venice. It's called Planet B, Climate Change and the New Sublime. What's interesting about the show is that all the works are on sale, and it has been organized by his curatorial platform, Radicant. So I'm quoting from their website. Radicant is an international curatorial cooperative working with independent professionals. We conceive, produce, and organize institutional or commercial art exhibitions. We provide advising for projects or programs. Radicants has even an exhibition space in Paris. So I wanted to start with Nicolas because I think it's a clear example of how we are walking the thin line between the institutional and the commercial. I showed the image of MoCo first because I have this idea, but maybe I'm wrong, that in a way MoCo was the dry run to Radicants.
Yeah.
Please, can you tell us a little bit about it and why you conceived Radicants?
We could come back on the oranges and lemons of Michele Robecchi, but I don't have the same lemons and the same oranges, actually. I think for me the oranges are exhibitions which provide a vision of art, or an intelligence of art, you know, an idea about it. And the lemons are all the bad ones. And that's the main distinction I make in a group show, for example. Works being for sale or not, we all know that this distinction has been completely blurred in the last 20 years. So rather than trying to turn around this kind of hypocrisy, you know, it's really important to address it and to create the entities which answer this new situation and are able to provide, you know, a new way of intervening on the market. And for example, yeah, as you saw, Radicans is a curatorial platform. The base of all our activities is a curatorial vision, not only mine. I just did the first one because it was easier, but the exhibitions you could see in Paris, for example, there was a solo show by Bruijne, curated by Noam Segal, and we have 5 different curators at the moment, you know, showing each an emerging artist. And we have many projects also for the future with other curators, you know, not only in Paris but abroad. But the idea is that we both produce and conceive, you know, with this network of curators, exhibitions that are museum exhibitions on one side, that are in a way produced with the institution, with the foundation, with the person that wants to make it exist, or commercial exhibitions. But, you know, just 2 different aspects of what the curator can do, but it's not dividing the world into galleries on one side and institutions on the other is something which is something from the past. You know, for me, it's the old world, frankly. It doesn't work like that anymore. No. And we have to just answer to this situation by proposing something else that would be a virtuous circle also, because every project we're doing, actually when I hire a curator for a project, this curator is part of the economy of the project. You know, he or she is paid also if we sell something. You know, and for the first time, curators are really part of the economy, which is never the case, you know, anywhere. So these kind of things, for me, create a virtuous circle. We also work in a different way with artists because we don't represent any artists. We're not a gallery. So we also work with galleries. Like, for example, we've been working with you on this exhibition here, actually, about Bianca Bondi, for example. You know, it creates also a new type of network and a new type of activity, which is, at the end, very creative. You know, even for me, I just discover a lot of things. The thing is, I didn't become an art dealer because I would be the worst art dealer ever, frankly, believe me. But Radican is a platform where there's someone who takes care of this, you know, who's a professional. We hire more professionals also to sell the artworks because it's not my job at all. Others organize exhibition, you know, in a really technical way. And this is the platform that allows many different types of projects also, including, it's here, consulting also.
Okay. Let me get to Alan first and then to Alex. As a gallery, you're used to work with the market, with art fairs, but also with biennials. How do you navigate, for example, the participation of one of your artists at Aperto or Venice Biennale or some other biennial?
How I navigate?
Yes, or how do you deal with that? Because, I mean, very often...
I think we discussed this before. I think, and also answering the first question, like, is the art fair and the gallery world and the museum world and the biennials, are these 2 separate worlds? I think nowadays it is one world, and maybe I'm the proof also, because I came from curating and working in a museum, and there was a certain moment that I thought, yeah, now it's more important for young artists to start a gallery than to start again a non-profit space in Amsterdam. In 1999, that was the situation. that there were a lot of good non-profit spaces, but not so many good galleries. So then, when you start from art or the artist, then you're much more looking like, yeah, what is necessary? What is necessary for them? And at that time it was, and still it is, to having a gallery that's more curatorial, that's not going for the easy pieces, but also is prepared to go for performances, more conceptual work, or even work that you cannot sell, like the rubble mountains of Lara Almartigui, that are not for sale. And then it's very handy, of course, that you have a curatorial background, because then it's easier to understand the needs. But at the end of the day, the artists have to pay their rent. So that's also important. I see the importance to sell the work and also bring it to a higher level. And I mean, career-wise, that it's able, that an artist is able to jump to a museum or jump to a more important collector. So therefore, I started the gallery. But for me, it is one world. It's not a separate world. What I understand, and I really do understand that public money and private money is, of course, a different thing. Because, let's say, tax money, public money, that's from us all. And then you have to be aware, like, where do you spend it? And, for instance, with Dora Garcia and Lara Amartegui, when they did the Spanish pavilion, there was no question asked to the galleries, like, can you pay for the transport? Or can you, no,
it's not the same as with the Aperto, with the main Italian pavilion. Alex, let's go straight to the heart of the matter, because there's one case I know particularly well. One of my favorite artists, Chilean Voluspa Jarpa, with whom you work with. She was at the Chilean National Pavilion at Venice. And that was, I mean, you know that Chile pays a little bit, but most of it you have to fundraise. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, actually that case was one of the only times that we didn't pay anything for the Venice Biennial. I think maybe the only time, because there's always, you know, something that, you know, is asked for galleries, well, depending on the level of the project and depending on the project is going to have different scales. In this particular case is an institution called Antena, which is like, it's like a foundation with collectors, patrons, all over Chile, who actually, they really believe in the soft power of art. And actually, they gather all the necessary money, which was a lot of money because it was a very intense and very like quite a complex pavilion to be built, and they just funded everything. So it was, but well, this is very rare. Actually, I have to point out that because, you know, like before getting into detail, I just want to point out like three important things to understand this relationship between funding, galleries, and art fairs and biennials. Is that the first one is that it's extremely, extremely rare that one artist get paid for its participation in a biennial. It almost doesn't exist. Like I could find 3 examples where it happens. Only 3 among the great variety of biennials that exist. The second point is that you know, this kind of, there's different also categories and hierarchies between biennials and fairs. So, of course, the Venice Biennial is stronger than the Cuenca one, for example. So actually, you don't get the same. You don't get the same attention or the same demands on each of them. And the third one is, as Ellen was telling, and I totally agree with her, is that this kind of tension between where the fund comes and if you sell the work in Basel from the biennial, it happens the same within institutions. You know, when we've been dealing with this idea within institutions, like especially in countries like the United States, where the fund most of the time is private. So it's not like a new situation. So in this case of Chile, to be honest, it was fantastic, but it's one case among in 10 years of gallery, you know, is the first time this happens, that we don't give 1 penny.
Well, I know from Voluspa that it was Antenna did a lot of hell of a job, because they put together lots of people, collectors, foundations, whatever, to get that done. So that was really amazing. But what you said, it's fascinating, because I have some more images. I took this from Freeze magazine. I'm sorry, I hacked the hacker, because actually what they had was here, they had curators, and there on the other side they had dealers. And I thought it was fun to put art fairs and biennials. So this brings us to the idea, is art just too refined for business? Which takes us to the next slide, which is interesting, is I put this out, the Venice Biennale sales office that was running until 1973. And actually, until late 60s, beginning in 70s, practically all shows were sales shows, museum shows, biennial shows, the Royal Academy shows. They were just sales shows. So when we think about biennials and art fairs, we think anachronistically from the present. Oh, a biennial, works are not sold, but always been the same. And I want to quote Clarissa Rizzi. She's an academic, Italian academic, and she has studied and researched the Venice Biennale profoundly. And she says this interesting thing. The charter reform of 1973 was substantial, and it helped the Venice Biennale to become a contemporary platform, closer to the documenta model. But in both 1984 and 1993, the sales office seemed an appropriate solution to manage value exchange independently, which means that while the sales agency disappeared, and here you see this elegant gentleman, Ettore Gianferrari, who was the official dealer. He charged 15% for the Venice Biennale and 2% for him of every sold artworks. The thing is that while the sales agency was closed, due to, well, dealers' pressure like Leo Castelli, Iliana Sonavent, and also France, September 68, anti-market attitudes and whatever, it has been always on the table. And it has been always a discussion with different curators, with Achille Bonito Oliva, whatever, if they were going to reopen the sales agency again. So you see that what you said, Nicolas, it has always been blurred. And Alain Servin, the famous Belgian collector, he says that he buys a lot, most of his works at biennials and or museums, and he says that if you go into a biennial or a museum and you look at the label and it says courtesy the artist or the gallery, then the work is available, no? So now the question is, this is maybe a tricky question. Before we go to this question, is it ethical? I mean, for example, for the Venice Biennale, to ask, you know, in a way that the gallery produces, transports the work, secures the presence of the artist. What is your take on it?
Well, first, it depends on the biennials. Not every biennial is the same.
No, Documenta for sure not, and maybe some others, but in the case of Venice, I mean, it's clear.
And further, the question is a bit tricky, because I personally, I don't think art biennials look like art fairs. Maybe bad biennials, yeah, but look at the Venice Biennale this year, I don't think there's anything to do with an art fair, to be honest. And so it's not really true. And the question is a formal question. The question is a question of meaning. No? if you go to an art fair, there's no meaning. Actually, you're just confronted to artworks which are just isolated, deprived of any context, and inserted in no narrative, and that's the difference, and that's the biggest difference that can exist between the two.
But let me get to the ethical question, because we know what happens. It doesn't only happen in some biennials, especially Venice, but even in, as dealers, most museum shows and even many national pavilions in Venice that are totally funded by dealers, galleries. What is your opinion on that? Do you think it's just a sign of times?
I don't know if the right term is to say if it's ethical or not. It's a fact, it's just happening, and you also have to, like galleries, they have to deal with that. But like there was just like an article just came out a couple of weeks ago on Artnet about they did like a very large investigation about the top biennial artists that actually are around. Turns out that in the top 20, we have 4 artists in the top 20, and we have in total 16 artists from the gallery in the top of the most shown biennials artists. Does it mean that we sell all that? And that we sell all the works that these artists show in the biennials? No. Like I wished, like I would be like extremely happy, because if half of the program, just sell because it's in the biennial. So you have to nuance also, like what type of work is shown in those biennials. Also, something very important to point out is that in this top 20 and even top 50, none of those artists are painters. And that's very important to understand, because like the painting with the stamp of the biennial sells better, for sure. And also, to go back to maybe this ethical question, I'm going to point out an example that recently we had one artist, Marwa Sanius, now in the present Documenta, that had a lot of problems. And there's this one painter actually participating in Documenta that actually forced the curator team to include a set of 3 paintings that they had no room to place them, because they were pre-sold as Documenta paintings. And if the works were not presented at Documenta, the business was out.
Shit.
Now we're talking about ethical things, but this is...
Well, it's normally I used to say that there are 3 USPs, unique selling propositions or sales techniques. No, what I say is I think, and dealers in the audience, please correct me if I'm wrong. I say one is this artist or such artist going to participate at Venice, Documenta, whatever. A second one is this artist going to participate in an exhibition at Tate MoMA or something like that, a big museum. And the third USP is this artist is just being collected by Rubel or LVM or Pinot or whatever. So what you're talking about is, in a way, is what in other sectors, especially financial sector, is totally prohibited. And that is an interesting thing we can link tomorrow to the Paris scene. It's insider information. Because I think that biennials, and especially, it's also MICs and dealers work with insider information. No? And very often, what you just said is that very often the fact that an artist is going to participate in a biennial or an important large-scale international event but can be a good sales argument. So we're going back to the limits that are blurred. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, continue. But I I think that the point is, yes, the art world is maybe not so aware of different money angles, you can say, because we are all dealing with this artists and art pieces and culture, which is a good thing. And I think in normal companies, there is much more, they divide much more the public money and the private money. Maybe I think also the intertwining money things and art is very happening now, and you cannot take them apart. But maybe in the future, we will, I mean, I think also in with normal companies and countries, it's they are trying to make it more transparent, and this is something. It's of course not transparent. It's and maybe you can also say it's not fair. That some artists are having a kind of free platform on biennials, and that you sell it in a profit situation, like in a gallery. But this is something now. It's not an issue, but I think maybe in the future we have to think about it more specifically.
Yes, you're right. Nicolas, you curated quite some biennials. My question would be, if an artist exhibits, you include an artist in an important biennial, how is your experience? I mean, does that impact the price of the works, his career? How is your experience about that?
This I don't really know, actually, because I never really got interested in that, actually. And even now, actually, I have to say, for example, the artist I'm showing in Venice, I'm not wondering, are they sellable or not? I just constitute an exhibition exactly the same way as I would do in a non-commercial context, and then I ask some other people to sell them, which is totally different.
Yeah.
So, but it's not the selection is not oriented by the market at all, which is really the most important thing, because the real question behind yours here is that does the fact that a gallery is sustaining an artist a sufficient reason to invite him or her, actually.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a perversion of the system. For example, when I know for sure that if an artist was contacted to do the French pavilion at the Venice Biennale, for example, he or she comes with a gallery. Otherwise, there's no fucking chance to have it. And that's a fact. And that's the way that, in a pervert way, I would say, it orientates the selection. And that's the enemy. Not the money is fine. It's not the question. The question is, does it modify and pervert the choices, actually, that curators or institutions have to do?
I remember Robert Storr, when he was doing his Venice Biennale, that he was complaining about having to do a lot of fundraising to get his artists finally to Venice. Alex, how's your experience about that?
I want to point out something really important that Nicolas said, and because we're really talking about this, like this tiny limit between the ethical side and within like the formal side, and this is something very important because we know as a fact, and I'm going to answer with two like artists who don't have a gallery, they have little chances to go to like a major art exhibition because they have no fund. And also happens that whenever we try to find financial support to help these artists, it also happened to us that was because we're going to be honest here, like if someone wants to fund a project is because behind he has an idea, which means that he's going to support that work And then he's going to try to buy that work because, you know, like he went to the biennial stamp and, you know, it's very important to have that. But, of course, he's going to get back the production cost. He's going to get a discount. And then he's going to buy the work, which means that finally, you know, like even if it was like a major project, the final gain for both the gallery and the artist is very little. You know, that's a fact. And also what happens is that sometimes, you know, if you try to find this funding, the person, the institutional collector is going to tell you, can we change the project? You know, like I'm happy to fund, but a project that I'm happy with, or that I can buy, and then it can change, you know, the curator's vision of it, because if he wants to present the artist at any price, he has to change the project, because if there's no exit for that work, it won't happen.
So the real question is, it's not between private money or not, it's where is it private money situated? Where is it? Is it after the choice or before the choice? And that's the real question.
And then you are on a dangerous road.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to be a little bit dissident with Nicolas. Look at this image, and look at the next one. One is at Art Unlimited, and the other one is at the Ibirapuera Pavilion at Venice. When I said that galleries and art fairs look alike, it's a little bit because they have lots of things that are in common. We don't need to look at a point, but global art, painting one medium, installation, corporate private funding, curated sections, VIP lounge, whatever. Venice even sells VIP cards, platinum, gold, silver. There's a catalog. So when you look at all those talks at fairs, biennials, whatever, when you look at it one way or another, I think that they have started to look alike. And I think also that they started to look alike because, in a way, these sophisticated platforms like art fairs and biennials, it's something that, I mean, help cities compete in this really ruthless, competitive culture capitalism in the 21st century, where cities compete for being on the map. Actually, this morning, if you were here, the person from Catalan Cultural Enterprises, he was talking about precisely that, about putting a city on the map, you know, competing with culture. And this is what's all about, because today it's not politics, it's not philosophy, it's not religion. The only thing that brings us together is culture. So I think that's these platforms, or maybe a blockbuster exhibition, but these platforms like fairs and biennials and things like that are really very strong attraction poles, and they are also temporary, so they are awaited every year or every 2 years, you know. So how much time do I have left, Sol? I'm not looking.
2 hours. not more.
Paco, I just want to de-demonize this idea of like putting a work that you see in Basel, that you see in the Venice Biennial, and put it in a fair is a bad thing. How, like, when a gallery, because unfortunately a lot of people think, and Ellen, you will agree with me, that we are banks. We're not banks. So, like, we cannot just give money for projects everywhere. You know, we can't. You know, we do have to find a solution, and we have to find a balance between what we support and how we get the money back. So if you put a lot of money on a project for Venice, and then you ask to the artist to maybe give, like, adapt some part of that work, so you can put it in an art fair and sell it, and then you get back your cost, you're happy. And I'm not feeling that I'm betraying the art world and I'm betraying the art history. It's just, we are just getting back the money that we're putting, and we have to be honest. You know, we cannot just give the money. I will be happy to just fund works in any single biennial, And but it's not possible, you know. And I know that stronger galleries like Perrotin or like Hauser and Wirth or Pace, they agree with this, you know. We cannot just continue funding things and not getting anything back. So we have to de-demonize this idea, and we have to think that we are living in an ecosystem. We all, you know, turn on the same level, but at some point, you know, galleries, we need to back up and we need to continue. And in order to continue, we have to use this kind of mechanics, you know, and it's not a bad thing. It's just happening.
Well, it's just the blurring of the limits of whatever, and I think that it's much more complex, because from my own experience, what today in the art world isn't possible, tomorrow it is. So I think that in today's cultural capitalism or neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, it's every time more and more complex, and it's also it deals with complexity and contradiction. So and you especially as dealers, and you, Alan, you have to confront every time the decision: do I sponsor this exhibition or not? You know, because I guess that for some of your artists like Falke Pisano and so, you get petitions for shows, and especially from the US, that they are asking for funding. So I mean, and you're a mid-tier gallery, you're not Gagosian or whatever, because Gagosian can easily fund a show at a museum or biennial or whatever. So it's much more complicated for you. So.
But in that sense, Ellen, like we have kind of complex programs. You know, it's not like 100% commercial programs. And actually, if you're talking about contradictions, you know, we have to go further. Is that a lot of the artists, in that case, the top 4 that we are talking, at least in our gallery, most of them, they criticize like the power, like migration, the capitalistic system, and at the same time we have to ask funds to show in the capitalistic work that we are against that. Yeah. So if we go into the contradiction, we can go really far away, and we share that common thing, you know. So that's why, you know, I was really happy to be here, because you know, they always think about the good and the bad. And, you know, it's just a system that it's all the time evolving. There's a lot of contradictions. We just deal with them, and we try to handle it, you know, the better we can. But we cannot just say black or white, you know, because there's a lot of gray.
But it's very convenient to say black and white, no? That's what I'm doing. It's my task. Should I open the discussion? Okay, before I open the discussion to the audience, because I'm sure lots of you will want to interact with the speakers. I showed you the first image of the art tomb by Pablo Helguera, and this was he made a second one for my book, and it says, you can read it there: the first path will lead the artist to aesthetic glory and art historical fame. The second is just what you take when you need to pay the rent. And I mean, Pablo is always
very accurate.
Very accurate and very on time. Okay, I'm happy to open the discussion to the audience. So, anyone? Oh, there's a question over there. Thank you. I didn't drink water.
Thank you so much. No?
It works.
Very, very interesting. Thank you very much. So, Nicolas, you talked about this kind of artworks being out of a context, deprived of kind of narrative in a fair situation. I'm very close to also having artists that deal with geopolitics, history, very narrative and deep research. A little bit also with what Alex was saying, and it's maybe like a question to both of you, and even Ellen, if she would like to participate. Do you believe that with such strong narratives, or artists with strong works, that the narrative is super important and not just the aesthetic part of it? could you kind of micro curate a booth, like make it really like a super small exhibition space? I don't think that always in an art fair context it's deprived of this kind of meaning. I think that perhaps we could use the possibility to also produce something. Many times it's a dialogue, or many times it's something.
Absolutely, it's not a matter of square meters, at all. And even before being a matter of narratives or not, because I really think that the main difference between Basel and Venice, to take this metaphor, is first formal. On one side, you have a juxtaposition of artworks which are not organized in a common space. There's a total lack of what is called curatorial grammar, because this is a grammar. Space is a grammar. When you curate an exhibition, it's not the same part of the brain that you use when you write a text. It's something which is completely different, because visual thinking is totally different from discursive thinking. And an exhibition has first to take care of the space it is allowed. In an art fair, nobody gives a shit about it, right? So it's just boxes, and then you just put things in the boxes. Some galleries, of course, make some efforts and do very nice booths.
They're getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, it's not the same, right? Okay. So the first thing is, before even the problematics that the artists are addressing, is a question of the organization of the space. I think. And then you have all the narratives, which can be historical narratives, which can be theoretical narratives, which can be many other types of narratives. But that's the big difference between the two, and those are my apples, my oranges, and my lemons. And it's not a matter of artworks for sale or not for sale. That's for sure.
Maybe an interesting detail that you can read in my book, sorry for the shameless self-promotion, is that one of the directors in the 90s, Lorenzo Rudolph of Basel, he said that finally he picked up Basel when Basel was down, having lots of competition from new art fairs in Paris, Madrid, Chicago, whatever. And he said that he finally got the fair to be #1 again. And then he went to Venice and he saw that his biggest competitor was the Venice Biennale, because the dealers were standing literally in front of the artwork selling it. And that's how and why they conceived Art Unlimited. The huge, exhibition space to compete precisely with Venice and to also attract institutions and things like that. So anyway, it's a fascinating story.
But again, I had we have to stop thinking that having a curatorial approach and sell are like contrary, are opposite. I think in our cases, since day one, we curate every single show we do in an affair. And actually, I this morning I received the portfolio that we're going to send for the next fair here in London, and it's 25 pages. We don't have that much art, but everything is built, and we give a context, and we give a social context, and we give a political context, and we are there to sell. So Ellen has a very complex program too, and we are happy to sell, So you're always very here in the art world, there's always this contradiction. No, if you want to sell, you have to be commercial. But there's other ways to be commercial and not necessarily being easy. There's ways. You just have to work out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe I can add something. I think when I have a question or I just do not know it anymore, then I go back to the artist or back to the artwork, back to the artist. And then it's very important to have a good piece. And a good piece, maybe it's complex, or maybe I have to put a lot of effort in it to explain, and I will do it again and again and again. But in the end, I think when it's a good work, it will sell, or it will get a place. I mean, I'm not even thinking in selling, but it gets a place, and it in a museum or in a private collection. And I think, or I want to teach my artists right from the start that there is not something like, I'm going to make a commercial work for the gallery and a real work for a museum.
It never works.
That's important to
It
say.
never works. It never works.
Never. Please stop thinking that you can make a commercial work. It doesn't exist. It's also, I mean, to make a good work is already so complex. Focus on that.
And actually, if you go to visit Nicolas' show in Venice, you will never guess that the works are for sale, because it looked like a museum show, and I don't think the aim one single minute was to sell. It just happens that the works are for sale, but as the construction of the show is not a commercial, is not giving a commercial side. It's just that the works are for sale. So you can find those balances, you know. And I think it's fascinating that today there's a bigger awareness about that, and that curators and dealers we are mostly working on that, because you know, it's again, you know, it's not just one side or the other. You can find a place where you find both.
And it's important also to insist on the collective model. You know, when I say it's a curatorial platform, it means also that I'm sure that in the near future, you know, all the galleries which are not super galleries like Perrotin, Werner, Hauser and Wirth, Gagosian, who are actually have several spaces and several continents, will have to learn how to work differently and also with other people, actually. And that's my bet. That's it.
That's good. It's now or never. More questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
never.
6. It's never then. Okay. Thank you for being here.
At the bar then.
Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Nicolas, Alex, Alan.
Thank you,
It was
Paco.
a great
Thank you,
talk.
Paco.
Thank you for assisting.